You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hello, Shoe In Show listeners all over the globe. We are glad that you're back for another edition of the Footwear Industries podcast. I am Matt Priest, and I am joined by my co-host today, Jasmine Pendergrass. Jasmine, how are you doing? You hanging in there?
Yep, hanging in there. It's getting easier. The days and weeks are getting better, getting adjusted. So doing well. How are you?
Comes one moment I'm feeling fine, and the next moment I read some headline, I'm feeling terrible. So I'm just trying to, ensure my anchors and a foundation much bigger and stronger than COVID or footwear industry economics and the like. And we're just kind of plowing along. I'm not trying to be dour on the Shoe In Show, but let's face it, these are different times that we're all facing.
Yeah, there's benefits and there's some cons, but I will say some of the benefits, besides like having footwear on as more of an option nowadays versus a requirement Monday through Friday. The other one is that like some of our like executives and directors just have a little bit more time to chat with us. We always seem to get great people on our show, but I think now we have like the opportunity to, just chat with more people. And I was able to chat with Kerhyl Gantt, digital brand director of Jordan brand at Nike recently. And I was really excited to talk to her. One, because, she's a young Black female in a role like that, also in the digital space and at one of my favorite brands personally. I think yours too, Matt, if I'm not mistaken. Of course.
I mean, it's a requirement if you are part of a trade association around footwear. You have to love Jordans, and I grew up in the age of Jordan, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the documentary was definitely a reminder of how much we all love the Jordan brand and the story behind it. And I was kind of able to chat with Kerhyl about some of that, as well as, the challenges that she faces in her current position, because she hasn't been in it too long, but has been with Nike for several years. It's actually been her first real job out of college. So her story is very interesting. She had a lot to add to the conversation. Great conversation with her. So Blake, if you want to go ahead and tee up the audio with Kerhyl Gantt.
And this is Kicks Over Coffee, where we talk about all things footwear over coffee, water, tea, whatever we have, actually. And I am Jasmine Pendergrass. I am the Director of Events and Marketing at FDRA. And today I am excited to speak to Kerhyl Gantt at Jordan Brand. She is the Digital Brand Director there. And this is like our first time chatting, so I'm excited to kind of like dig into her journey, ask a couple like brand and marketing questions, and just talk about like the current state that we're all in and how it's all affecting us like personally and business wise. So Kerhyl, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. I was going to kind of start with the whole virus situation, right? But I think like everybody can kind of use a break of that, just like a tad bit. So I'm going to, I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, which is right outside of DC. And I believe if I'm not wrong, you went to Howard University for undergrad.
I did. I know the DMV area fairly well. It's been a while. But yeah, college days, DC at Howard, I'm pretty, DMV. I spent some time throughout all of those areas.
I always like shamelessly plug HBCUs just because I'm such a like big believer in them. And then of course, since you went to Howard and that's like my hometown area, I am curious, like what made you choose there? Like what made you choose the prestigious Howard University?
No, that's a good question. Man, going back, I've been out of school a little over 10 years now. And when I was applying to the program, it was between Howard and a couple other programs like Emory, NYU. Mm-hmm. And when I got into Howard, I was also a student athlete, so I was a swimmer too. And, I wanted to make sure I can swim for a program. But at Howard, it was one of those things where I knew that would be the one space where I get to truly be myself in a safe space, be unapologetically who I am, kind of mature into not only the woman I want to be, but the type of Black woman I want to be, and have as much exposure and interest and engagement and opportunities to learn more about my culture and who I am with so many people who, yes, look like me, but come from so many different cultures. And I think that was one thing I didn't think would be as prevalent, because we all come from one community. Like, I grew up in inner city Houston, Southwest Houston, Texas, and everyone in my environment, everyone in my environment, looked like me, had the same experience. It wasn't as diverse from an experience point of view, but when I got to Howard and saw so many phenomenal Black people from so many different areas, backgrounds, experiences, classes, countries, that was something that truly just helped me thrive and see culture in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And in a way, it was kind of a culture shock too, to be honest. You think culture shock is like completely different, but seeing and experiencing the breadth of your culture in one space and the amazingness of it, that was phenomenal to see. So that's one reason why I picked it.
Yeah. I definitely feel like I tell people all the time, not that I think anybody's school choice is bad, but going to an HBCU, it's a feeling of no other. Having that homecoming experience is just like, it's one of one for sure. I see also that you got your degree in finance. So were you interested in doing something else? What were your career aspirations back then versus now?
Yeah, I was all over the board way back in the day. Like I said, first I approached it. Yeah, I grew up in inner city Houston, like I said. So I didn't come from a incredibly wealthy background. So for me, when I first started school, I was like, okay, I want to get a job and just make a ton of money. I was like, I could be a doctor, or maybe I'll be an actuarial scientist because I heard they make a ton of money. Tried those things for about a semester or two, realized that is not my interest at all. And honestly, before then, I didn't really know that much about marketing. So I went into the finance field, and I've always been pretty decent at math and at numbers. And I started my finance courses. I just realized or thought, if I do finance, it's something that I can always use and like something I can lean on in my career, regardless of what path I go. However, when I was in undergrad, I interned at Nike. And my first internship at Nike was actually in finance. And that was the first time I realized or truly saw the power of marketing when I did that internship through the voice of Nike, which is obviously a phenomenal marketing engine. And at that moment, I knew if I had to pick the type of work experience, life experience where my passions would be, it would definitely be marketing and not finance. Okay. And so that's when, I kept my major in finance because I didn't want to spend extra time in school trying to get new credits. But I knew from that point on, every experience I have either at Nike or if it were outside at Nike, it had to be in a marketing field because I knew that's where my passion would be. And that's something I don't think I would have determined until after. That's something I wouldn't have learned or noticed unless I had that experience interning, because you can't really learn marketing in a textbook necessarily. It's really tough, like the 4 Ps, the 5 Ps. Yeah, exactly. So when I read in a textbook, I wasn't really interested. But when I saw how you did it in real life at a company, that's when I knew that this is something that I want to be passionate about. So.
Cool. So what's interesting, because I thought about, this wasn't like a big question for me to ask, but I was curious. Last year we did our first African-American footwear forum in collaboration with Pencil. And one of the components of the 2-day event was to go to a university, and we collaborated with Howard alumni to talk to their students about different ways you can enter into the footwear industry, because a lot of times I think that people just don't know that there's so many jobs, and you can actually work in an industry that you actually love and already invested in. And it's funny that you say that your internship was in finance, because it's that's something that people don't think about. Hey, you could still work at a brand that you wear every day and still do finance. So
exactly, you can be an engineer, a material scientist, operations. Exactly. Legal, so many different pieces.
Yep. Was there a huge brand presence from those kind of big companies at Howard? Like or were you just like online? Like, how did you get that internship?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's, I talked to so many of my friends who went through that same experience as I did. And it's definitely been different for everyone. For me, during that time, at least, Nike did come to Howard's campus to recruit. Okay. And so during that time, I had an opportunity to actually meet a ton of the recruiters at the different recruiting events. And also during that time, too, if there are people in college who are watching, being a part of those organizations. So at that point, I was a part of the student athletic committee. So I helped bring companies like that to Howard just because I knew I would be interested in working in sports. I was an athlete my entire life. So working in the sports industry or athletic industry was kind of dream state for me. So I really used that time in college to connect with those companies and try to bring them to campus. So that was a start for me. But also too, a part of that was, going through the traditional process, which sometimes seems a little tedious and a little daunting because you go on this portal, you input your information, you press send, and you have no idea where it goes. You don't know if people see it. You may or may not get a call back. So unfortunately, that part could be a little tedious, but literally between, making sure I was present at all those recruiting events, but then also realizing I need to set myself apart during that time was big. So in college, so long ago, but in college, I spent a lot of time. I found a way to structure my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I would intern on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Okay. And during that time, I was interning with the Washington Nationals and the Washington Wizards because I knew I wanted to work in sports. Okay. So I would structure all my classes, have swim practice in the morning and in the evening. But that was my way of, one, building up my resume when I knew I had to work for free. So just internships are free in college. You're not getting paid. But I wanted to build up my experience, but also to see if I actually like it. I just learned you really don't know what you like until you try it. You can read a job description and money could be great or a title could be great, but you really want to try to enjoy what you do because you spend a lot of time doing it. Yeah. So those were the two things that helped me, one, bridge that, connect with Nike people, but then also make sure, as I connected with them, I found a way to try to set myself apart and show that, I'm taking initiative to begin that journey.
Cool. So were you scared at all that you might have not gotten to like this role because you had like the finance degree? Like, did that discourage you at all?
When I interned at Nike in finance, I think the biggest thing too you have to realize, or at least I feel is important, is that regardless of what you're doing, you still need to kill it. So although I was in finance, I was still making sure I tried to kill it in that internship. Sure. And, at that stage, they definitely are recruiting when you're interning or recruiting when you're helping and volunteering too. They're trying to find good talent all the time. And it's actually sometimes hard to find really good talent. So it's always an interview process, even when you're interning or volunteering. And at that time, because of the way I was approaching the finance role, they asked if I would want to come back for an internship the next summer. Oh. And of course, I love Nike, but the one thing I did share was that the only way I would come back is if my internship would be in marketing, not in finance. Okay. And so for me, that was the pivot of how I started getting that marketing internship, but I kept the finance piece. And I think that's where I remember having this internal dialogue too, and realizing that this could be a fork in the road of my life experience. What I want to do. I love finance, but do I want to sit, no offense to finance, in a cubicle and crunch numbers and look at spreadsheets? I can do it. Do I want to do that for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day? For me, maybe not. Yeah. But do I want to have this really great marketing experience that I'm starting to feel really passionate about? And that was for me the moment where I realized if it's Nike or not Nike, I know that this is a route I want to go. And so I really focused on what craft do I want to build versus what company I want to work for first. Yeah. And thankfully, Nike said, of course, come back, we'll put you in marketing. And that was the start of that experience.
Incredible, because some people's journey straight out of college is the struggle. So just to work at a brand like that immediately. So did you, so I'm assuming that you went straight into Nike after you graduated. So did you move? Did you go from DC straight to a different city? How did that work?
I went straight from DC to Portland, Oregon. So talk about another culture shock. Talk about the struggle though. When I graduated, it was 2008. So that was a recession at that point. So there actually weren't a ton of jobs open. And instead of accepting a full-time job, I accepted an internship out of undergrad. And I turned down full-time roles at other companies like Accenture and companies I knew I wasn't passionate about, but let's try this Nike thing out. Hopefully I get hired on. But they literally at that point weren't hiring because of the recession. So I interned for a full year, 1 full calendar year, before I even started full-time. And it was not, it wasn't clear whether or not I had the opportunity to even be full-time based on the economic climate at that point. So it was definitely a struggle too. I had to weigh some pros and cons, take the safe route and go with a full-time job or intern and see what happens. I might end up back home at Houston after, but thankfully it worked out. So that was my path from undergrad to Portland.
Okay.
And I went Nike ever since.
Yeah, that's great. So, in your current role, what does that look like? Like, what does the normal day look like, or what are the responsibilities under being like the digital brand director?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It varies every single day, literally, especially right now too, during COVID-19 and the new climate. But what I would say is what I focus on specifically is North America Jordan brand for digital, Nike Direct. So really focusing on how do we build as much energy, engagement, increase membership, drive sales for all of our products in our Nike-owned platforms. So that's sneakers, Nike app.com, email, performance marketing, everything with a swoosh on it that you access through your phone for North America. That's what I focus on. And I'd say, it varies everywhere from let's determine exactly how we want certain footwear and or brand stories to come to life in all of those avenues to how do we get really maniacal and obsess the journey across all of those channels for specific styles that might not be a brand defining style, but it's 100% a business defining need that we have to drive. So it can vary from incredibly fun, uber engaging, interesting campaigns to, okay, now we actually have to drive the business and really obsess a channel or digital run a show for a style where we have a ton of units and we have to make sure we're connecting to consumers. So it scales.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So what platforms do you think work best for you now then? What platforms, like how I think Twitter is when they start doing the 24-hour videos, everybody's integrating new things here and there. So are you finding that something works better than others or it's just really impressive for the moment right now?
Yeah, well, you have your new anomalies, and I guess they're not new. You have the TikToks of the world that are blowing up more now, but have been around for a while, especially during the stay-at-home time. Yeah. But I'd say, strategically, when we think about how do we want to get younger, we see still a ton of success in Snapchat. So that's one thing we focus on where we see a lot of success in getting younger and approaching Gen Z. Obviously, Facebook, more so Instagram, part of Facebook is incredibly powerful and will continue to be. Especially, it'd be interesting to see how that engagement changes after COVID-19 because the number of IG lives we see is blown through the roof in the last 3 weeks. Everyone should not do an IG live, but I like that people are trying. For me, those are the two that I love. And then when you think of a paid media and marketing piece, really going deep on a lot of those channels and platforms. So whether it's Twitter, IG, Facebook, Snap, etc., have been really big.
Yeah. Do you have any campaigns that I know being in this specific role is more new for you, maybe since last year?
Yeah, 7-8 months.
Okay, so, cool. Yeah. Do you have any projects that you worked on? Or just even while you were at Nike, period, anything that you're proud of or surprised you just in that digital space? Anything you can kind of highlight that was teachable for you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. 12 years, literally every role has been phenomenal in different ways. And it's Nike, at least for me, is a place where I'm so fortunate because I get to work with some amazing people and learn with some amazing people. But also, too, I almost like to say And this is my opinion, but I think I had such a great opportunity to literally learn from some of the best marketeers like in the world, like period. And so many of my experiences, many different types of experiences have been absolutely phenomenal. I'd say probably, I could think of 3 or 4 off top that I really loved. I'd say the most recent one in this role was launching the Bread 11s, the AJ 11s this past holiday.
Yep.
So it was my first official role in a digital function. So it's been great because I've been in brand for 12 years, but specifically on digital, going deeper there. It was a newer discipline with that much level of detail. So the sheer amount of knowledge I accrued during that time, phenomenal. But then 2, that specific launch was a world-breaking launch for Nike. So being able to lead our team in North America from a digital brand point of view on the highest number of sales for one specific shoe in the history of Nike, possibly the world, is that's phenomenal.
I read that.
Yeah. So being a part of the team and leading parts of a team that help execute that and build a plan for that and strategy for that, like that for me was a professional highlight and just a highlight in, like, I'm a very, intellectually curious person. So just learning a full new discipline with that type of risk and stress that comes along with it to execute it well, because you have pressure of not failing for sure. And doing that successfully with a team was phenomenal. And then the last thing I'd say though, like kind of back to the personal piece, and I alluded to it, but I remember when I was younger in Houston, Texas, seeing people line up for shoes around the block, and I would never even ask my parents for the shoes because I knew we couldn't afford them at that moment. Or I show up to school in elementary, middle school, and high school, and everyone has on new J's. I'm like, well, I'm gonna keep on my ABC shoes because I can't get the J's. So going from there to then going to this full circle moment where you're leading like the #1 world record breaking launch for the Jordans that, 20 years ago you couldn't afford or you didn't have, was almost a full circle moment for me personally. So personally, I feel like that was a highlight. That was definitely a highlight.
It's so funny how your job does that for you, like gives you that personal piece. And then also, I do want to add the last pair of shoes that I stood in line for were the 11s. I broke my arm in a doorway from being pushed because I was a lot smaller than right now. So it can get a little dangerous. So I didn't miss anything in those lines, but those are definitely like my favorite Jordans of all time. So I understand people like going out and getting those. That's very cool that you were a part of that.
Same. Thank you. And thank you for going through the whole consumer process with us.
What do you think keeps people so like loyal to the Jordan brand? Like now that you're like working on that side of things, do you see like through conversation or just like being like just more involved on that side of things? Do you have like a point of view of why you think that like they're always like the Jordans are always up here when it comes to sneaker world?
That is a good question. I was talking to a good mentor of mine who's a senior leader there a long time ago and saying, hey, we should do a case study on this. Or I want to see the old plans from 1980s and 90s just to see how they built the plan so long ago. I'd say first and foremost, and this is my view only, but first and foremost, the connection to the man MJ is incredibly important. You had a man who was like incredible, like the GOAT, in my opinion. I know some stuff is up for debate now, but the GOAT. And so first, I want to give kudos to the teams who helped build the vision and the meaning behind that brand way before me. So these are like the legends of our day. And creating something so strong and so well connected to a story, an amazing athlete who transcended so many barriers, like that is tied to something that's real. The second thing, obviously the product, it has to look great, and like the designers and really obsessing the details and trying to take it to a new space, like that product piece had been incredibly important. And the fact that you have so many designers who created silhouettes that can stand the test of times in some cases, I think is an important piece. And then the other part, I think, and this is more, as the brand continues to get older, but just thinking about the business model, and I'm going to get nerdy, but the scarcity model is something that I think is really important to create the longevity of any brand and continue to balance supply and demand and make sure you're creating those high heat moments where everyone isn't able to get access to it because it is so precious and is so scarce, but you're able to give it to enough people where they have a chance to feel like they're part of that connection to what Michael Jordan means, from one, being the GOAT, to two, like leading the lifestyle and culture. So even when we think about the business, like we think about all those things today, like what's the scarcity model and how do we maintain that? How do we still drive a business? How do we keep telling the stories of MJ? Like we're excited for The Last Dance to come out in about a week and a half now. It's like, how do we continue to tell those stories and connect, especially younger generations, to those stories, but also really tie it to a community of people who identify with that and help really the people in the community tell those stories too, I think is another big piece. So it's a combination of factors. But for me, it's always been, you can have a tagline for anything or a logo for anything, but it's not necessarily just about the tagline or the logo. It's about how are you making people feel, what is it doing, and what's the meaning behind it? And are you consistent with how you deliver on that meaning behind ABC tagline or ABC logo or person or brand? And I'm really thankful that in the past, people set that up in such a great way that now we can not only sustain it, but we have to build it and continue to maintain it and continue to bring new generations along for the ride.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you something you said made me think about something. Now I lost it. Do you feel like, okay, so I know I'm just saying this because like I'm just like a little outsider or whatever, right? But do you feel like you're learning like a new customer of Jordan? Like, are there, like, because it's such a like a staple, especially in the Black community, and like I just feel like it's kind of easy to know like consumers of Jordan brand, but do you feel like as time is going on, as digital is increasing and becoming more and more important, like you're learning like this new consumer for the brand?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I love about digital too, is that now we have all this information we can go deep on with consumers and what do they do and how they experience, how long do they engage, let's look at their age range. So absolutely, I think it's one, well, hey, how do we get younger? So when you think about Gen Z, probably you, making sure.
Millennial class.
Okay. Millennials and Gen Z, everyone 35 and below. How do we make sure, like there are definitely a ton of people in that age range who are connected, but it's definitely the old school sneakerhead and the younger, maybe Gen Z / millennial sneakerhead. How they view and how they experience the brand are two different experiences. So that's something that we, we're definitely learning. So we definitely see differences there because, they're just different experiences and backgrounds, and the way they came into the brand are different. I'd say that's one. What's the other one I was going to say? So I'd say it's age. I'd say the other thing too is women. Like we know that there's amazing opportunity to go deeper with her and go deeper with streetwear culture for her. So what does that look like? So we're definitely seeing that that's a new audience and how they engage with launches. Like everyone who's a woman might not wake up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to get the new sneaker because it's not a part of their culture. So how do we serve her where she is another thing we talk about. And what does she like? And how do we help that culture of sneakerheads for her, or sneaker culture for her, progress and evolve? How do we help guide that is another example of audience that's different.
I definitely have seen a big growth in that. If you would have talked to me like 5 years ago, like one of my biggest beefs was like the marketing around sneakers and women, because I just felt like it was so one-dimensional. I had a conversation on Instagram about this too, like just add pink, add glitter, call it a woman's collection. That's the branding around it. And it was just like, sir, like I don't even own pink. Like why?
No, like glitter.
Why are you pushing this on me? Like I have to be wearing this. And then like there'll be a men's shoe that I'm in love with, and I wear like a kid size. So now I can't even get it because you didn't make one. So, I've loved the growth and like how it's evolved over the time, like especially like the, those fearless ones that came out last year with Melody, like everything like that to me is a perfect example. And it shows that, like, it really shows the growth, like from the color scheme, Julie,
to the stories and the people,
like the messaging around it, icy bottoms on them. Like that's what women's release should look like to me. So I've definitely seen that. And like, shout out to you guys for like putting more thought in it. Like that's what I'm starting to see, like more thoughtful branding in regards to women. So
awesome. Yeah, that's a full team who's so dedicated and passionate about getting it right for her. So everyone's working on it. We're excited about it. I'm personally excited about it, of course.
On digital, do you feel like you have any problems like with, or not problems, but like challenging with messaging? Because you know how like before, diversity wasn't like as big of a topic as it is now. Women, or like your preference or what you want to be referred as, whether it's he, she, her, them. Like, do you run into, or like, does any of that scare you? Do you like, what's your approach to that?
Yeah. Oh, good question. It definitely doesn't scare me. I think it's fun challenges, and that's what I like about marketing, because it's we're changing, or the consumer's changing daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And so the great challenge that I think a lot of really great marketers like is, all right, how do we help connect with them where they are? And how do we help be a part of the conversation and add to the conversation? So, like, there's no fear there. Absolutely not. It's we're not dictating that. We want to help guide and be a voice for those communities. And I'd say, of course, it takes time. We're a large company. So trying to figure out how do we quickly evolve to match where the consumer is going is something that we always talk about, and we definitely are always working towards. And then also, to your point, making sure that the right people are represented in campaigns, and also within the company too, are things that we're always truly thinking about, so that we're peer, because we don't want to just preach it. We want to make sure that we're doing it as well, and showing it. So 100%.
Cool.
100%.
Okay. So I don't want to keep you forever. Okay. But as a African-American woman in the position that you're in, at a brand like Nike, and maybe it wasn't even challenges that like you might have experienced, but maybe somebody else at another, because we all go to industry things and meet other people at other big brands like a Google or Foot Locker or whatever. Have you had any challenges like just navigating in that space, or do you feel any responsibility at all being in that role?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I'd say both challenges and responsibility. I take that pretty seriously, especially the responsibility piece. Challenges, like, there are definitely challenges. And it's not Nike specifically, it's every company, it's the industry, regardless of the field. I'm a strong believer that, unfortunately, it's really good. Like, there's a certain leadership profile that exists everywhere. It typically doesn't look like us, sound like us, act like us. And so, that's something that I think we're all very cognizant of, or at least I'm cognizant of. And so I say probably for me, the two things that I really, had to work with on myself were, one, making sure I feel that I am, that I understand my value, and I'm ready and confident, unapologetic in sharing that value to teams. Two, that I really understand, and this took a lot of time out of my career, and it's something I still work on to this day, but realizing that my different perspective is also invaluable to the company. And, to be honest, like, we get paid to share our value and to share our thoughts. Like, that's what helps make great work. And so realizing that I need to be unapologetic in sharing my perspective, and really celebrate the fact that it is likely unique in a lot of situations, because that's the truth. and be okay with that and bring that to the table 24/7, 365. Now, how I bring it to the table and how do I make sure people feel comfortable and can understand it, that's something that I always have to work on too, because that's important. You want the message to cut through regardless of the audience. Sure. So those are two things I'd say that, I've always been a challenge and will be something that I'll probably always work on. And I've seen it be really tough for others as well. Yeah. The second one, kind of with the responsibility piece, I think one, the responsibility is, and I've seen it as I've observed and have so many mentors and at many different levels, I could see it kind of change from generation to generation and how it's approached. And for me, I think the responsibility is, as I continue to progress, making sure I'm showing up unapologetically as myself is what will help change the narrative and change the leadership profile. If I try to fit in or assimilate, then I'm not helping change that narrative and making it easier for people to come after me, because, everyone will feel that they can't come as their authentic self. Yeah. So that's something that I feel is a responsibility. And then two, mentoring, making sure I hire a diverse team. Like that's something that's really important to me and has been very evident in kind of my team building. So those are things that I don't take lightly. And some of that I credit to my Howard University education, but, my HBCU education, but having real pride in the fact that those things make a difference for sure.
Yeah. So kind of just because it is the elephant in the room, wherever you go, how has the shift been or the pivot been since the coronavirus?
Yeah, good question. Things have not slowed down because I'm in digital. So like all the doors are closed. So of course, it's all about trying to connect with them digitally. Yeah. So things have really picked up. I'd say what's changed the most is realizing how quickly such a large organization can move when you're truly tightly connected and planned, because we have to move quickly. Everything changes daily, weekly, monthly. And, we definitely feel like there's a need to connect with people at this time to help inspire them or empower them, or just make this time during this crisis a little bit more enjoyable than what it is. Like we feel like we can't do that as a brand. And that's how we've always approached a lot of moments like this. But with that, to your point, it's a lot tougher because we're working from home. So really getting used to Zoom, a lot of blue jeans, a lot of video conference calls. But also, making sure that we're being really thoughtful about like, what do we have to do to the business right now that makes the most sense? How do we change our plans so that the plans we built 3 months ago that are no longer relevant because the consumer is in a completely different space. Their sentiment is different. What they need right now is different. Their fears are different. So how do we, where do we need to change our plans, and how do we change that, whether it's creative, whether it's taglines, whether it's communication, so that we're never tone deaf and we're actually helping add value versus push something that isn't needed right now. Those things have been really important. Yeah. And the biggest thing is really now just learning how to work remotely on some massive pieces. Like the way you communicate, how you communicate, merging your work space with your life space.
Like texting your team now versus like just email. Like how do you is it really take over?
Well, we text all the time, even without. My group chat goes off. I put it on silent now because it's too much. But, between text, Slack, email, phone calls, like all of that, Zooms, other blue jeans, other video conference calls, like that has picked up. I'd say the biggest thing though now is, making sure the team is okay. Like it's not just about business. Like, how are you feeling? Having a lot more grace, not expecting everything to be perfectly dialed when you're presenting or planning, being ready to lean in and be all hands on deck a little bit more. We are always like that, but even more now has been more important because we're working from home, but it's also a crisis going on. Yeah. And we're actually just happen to be at home working, trying to work through it. So, the same way, everyone we serve is feeling, we're, individually have, challenges too, and everyone copes differently during times like this. So being really mindful of that is important. So I think it's brought a lot of people closer together. Yeah. Especially people with kids. And I know everyone's kids now and dogs and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. It's made everybody a little bit more personable. Like my team is really small. it's only a team of like 5, like our home team. And then we have some people that we work with that are like outsourced, but they're a part of the team. We work with them all the time. So it's like cool, even like seeing what like their living room looks like, or like our government relations guy just moved into like a new house. I'm like, oh, your house is really nice. Like, you know, like that insight. It's been cool. Thank you so much for like sharing. I feel like you had great advice and everything. Like, definitely great.
Jasmine, that was an awesome conversation. You know why? Because Jordan's this massive brand. It's a multi-billion-dollar brand. And to be able to kind of find someone who is a rising superstar within the brand, has so much going for her, has a dynamic story, and to just kind of get her she already has this wisdom about her, even though she's young and it's her first job out of college. And I really appreciate the opportunity to hear this and for you to kind of dive deeper into her life and how she got to Jordan and all the things that she's involved in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, to start at a brand like that it's going to be an interesting journey, and to be there and stay there so long really shows you how good of a company Nike is as well. So a very great conversation. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and getting just some deeper insights to the Jordan brand as well as Kerhyl herself. And if you would like to listen to more episodes, you can find them all at shoeandshow.com. Do not forget to rate us and make comments on the podcast. You can find us everywhere you can download podcasts, and we will be back around next week.
That's hilarious. So I think what she's saying, folks, is Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.